Ketanji Brown Jackson was officially nominated to the Supreme Court on April 7th of 2022, and this is certainly a historic moment for the United States, given that Ketanji Brown Jackson is the first black woman to ever be nominated to the Supreme Court. And while this is certainly a momentous occasion for the United States, I wanted to focus more specifically on the question of a Republican that was asked during these hearings. And this was a question that was asked by the Republican senator from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn. And she asked Ketanji Brown Jackson if she could define what a woman is. And Ketanji Brown Jackson's response to this was that she could not define what a woman is in this context, and that it was for biologists to decide. And the Republican response to this was, needless to say, predictable. They got into a huge uproar over it and essentially said that if Ketanji Brown Jackson can't define what a woman is, then it raises questions as to whether or not she's qualified to serve on the Supreme Court. And this brings me to the purpose of why I'm making this video. I wanted to provide a rebuttal to this claim that was made by Republicans, and I also want to dive in a bit to explore when it and where it may be appropriate to define terms. Now, I know that I'm a bit late here to the game when it comes to analyzing this event that transpired during the Senate confirmation hearings, but nevertheless, I hope that the analysis that I provide here may be able to provide at least some original insight as to what transpired during the Senate confirmation hearings. So first, I want to start with my rebuttal to the Republican response. So the point of these Senate confirmation hearings is to determine whether the person being questioned by the Senate is qualified to serve on the Supreme Court. But asking Ketanji Brown Jackson to define what a woman is seems to have little relevance to determining whether or not she's qualified to serve on the Supreme Court. If we were to examine the landmark decisions that the Supreme Court has made since its conception, it seems as though there are no major cases which have been determined by how one defines what a woman is. For example, if we were to look at Marbury versus Madison, it doesn't seem relevant here to define what a woman is. This case had to do with determining whether or not it was the state or federal governments which ultimately determined what the law is. So defining a woman here isn't going to help us in this case. If we were to look at another case, Brown versus Board of Education, once again, defining the term woman has very little relevance here. It isn't going to help us in determining whether or not racially segregated public schools are constitutional. And so defining the term woman here also has no relevance. Even if we were to look at a case such as Roe v. Wade, this case certainly pertains to women. But while this case certainly affects women as a group, the term woman here doesn't need to be defined to be able to make a decision on this case. What had to be determined here was if it was constitutional to pass laws which either severely restricted or just outright denied women access to abortion. And justices are more than capable of making this determination without defining what a woman is. Now, I want to be clear here that I'm not saying that it is inconceivable that there may be cases presented to the Supreme Court in which it may be important to define what a woman is. But it seems as though most of the cases presented to the Supreme Court will not be determined by how a justice defines what a woman is. I want to end this video on the topic of defining terms. There was an interview that took place recently in which the conservative political commentator Michael Knowles was interviewing the progressive political commentator David Pakman. And in the interview, David and Michael were discussing Senator Blackburn's question as well as Ketanji Brown Jackson's response to that question. And in the interview, David made the point of saying that one should not define terms because it often is a bad faith debate tactic that people will use. And while I agree with David that one should not define terms with bad faith advocates, it would seem as though there are instances in which we would want to define terms. For example, if we are debating abstract concepts such as equality or justice, these are often quite vague and their definition can often differ from individual to individual. And so it would seem as though in that instance we would want to define terms there. Or if we know the person that we are debating is debating in good faith and they ask a question such as what is equality or what is a woman, then it would seem appropriate to define these terms here because we know the person is being sincere in the questions that they're asking. And so this brings me to the question that I want to end the video on, which is, when should a person define terms in a discussion, or if they should define terms in a discussion at all? I would love to hear everyone else's thoughts on this as well. So if you're watching this on YouTube, then please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you're watching this on Twitter or Facebook, then you can let me know your thoughts by messaging me on either of these platforms.